is called Erev Hoshana Rabbah, the evening before Hoshana Rabbah, and there is a custom to stay up all night learning Torah. This is the second most popular night to do that, Shavuot being the first. However, this custom is not nearly as widespread as the Shavuot one, which is a whole other conversation on how that one started. But there is 1,000 millions of topics that can be discussed for tonight. I wanted to focus on something Sukkot related, so I figured I'll go with the Ushpizin. Ushpizin, I have them behind me over here. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David. Yes. Where are the women? Where are the women? So, they are...
Cooking.
By the way, great support actresses over there. Yeah, you have tremendous, and we'll talk about that tonight when we're referring to the different prophecies. Most of the imahot had stronger prophecies than the avot. And it's not lost upon, like it's not missed, right? It's actually quite explicit, right? That Rivka knows things that Yitzchak doesn't. That Sarah is a bigger prophet than Avraham is, right? It's just not that part of the story that is being told, right? But it is in there. So we will be touching and going, and we can dedicate many, many classes on the imahot and other prophetesses and other real important female characters that we have throughout the Tanakh and Torah in general. But please feel free to take the food is here for you to enjoy, to make blessings in the Sukkah. So really, really feel free to do so. You'll just serve people? Okay, no problem. So
thank you.
We have the 7 characters that are the 7 patriarchal characters as the fathers of the nation, and they are given the blessing for soup is shackle, and then we make a leshev basukah, the mitzvah of sitting in the sukkah. So that's why an extra mitzvah is said here tonight. No, we say it on a mizonot, so you can have a cookie.
Either on a cookie
or croutons.
I will eventually.
Or the croutons that we have.
Oh, the croutons. Well, then I'll
Yeah.
yeah.
You're trying to stand up.
Yeah.
It has like a curry-ish flavor with some coconut, so if anyone doesn't want that, just so you know.
Okay, so we have these seven leaders in the beginning of Jewish history, and they are given a few different titles, nicknames throughout the Jewish literature, and one of them is the 7 shepherds. The 7 shepherds of the nation, and we learn a tremendous amount about leadership. This is one of the things that is actually repeated quite a few times about Moshe, about the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu, in who he is a shepherd, and this is why God chooses him, because of the story that he goes and he's chasing after one of the sheep that runs away from his flock. And he goes after him and he finds him in a cave and he picks him up because he realizes he's too small and fragile and cannot walk by himself back to the flock. So Moshe carries the sheep on his back. Is everybody okay with the wind? It's a little bit.
Cold, we could always move inside.
We could move inside if it's too much for people. Okay? If you're good, you're good. Okay. So So Moshe starts carrying the sheep back to the flock, and at that point, God reveals himself to Moshe. So that is an important thing to realize, that God picked all of them for a specific kind of talent or personality that they have, and it's something that all shepherds need to have. So let's start with Avraham. Avraham Avinu is the father of the nation, and we have quite a weird opening introduction to Avraham, which is in the 3rd parsha of the Torah, which is the first Jewish parsha, right? The first parsha of the Torah, Bereshit, we're going to read it next Shabbat, has the creation of the world, Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve. Second parsha is Noach and the flood and all the different nations that come from there. And then we have Avraham. And Avraham, we know so many stories about him and nothing written in the Torah, right? So it's stuff that we've heard from our kindergarten teachers, or we've heard as stories that are being told. Avraham breaks the statues of his father. Avraham discovers God when he's 3 years old. But the truth is the Torah does not mention any of these things. The Torah refers to Avraham as as 75 years old. Avraham Avinu is is just there, right? It's him, his wife, and students. Hello. There's so Avraham, come, there's a chair right over there or over here. Make a cookie, make yourself an okay, make yourself a sukkah. So there's Avraham Avinu, is Hashem reveals himself to him, and he says, get up and go. And Avraham says, okay, and gets up and does it. That is our first interaction when Avraham is 75 years old. There should be a question there of, you hear a voice that tells you get up and go, question it, right? Like, who are you? When God reveals himself to Moshe, he says, I am the God of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. When God reveals himself to Avram, he should say, I am God, the creator of the universe. I am God, the God of Noah, right? Like, people that you know, that you've heard of, that believed in one God. But there's no mention of this. God just says, I am God, get up and go. And Avraham says, okay. So the midrashim, which are really important, they give a subtext and they fill in blanks and they say, well, Avraham actually knew that there was God because he discovered him when he was 3 and this is not the first interaction. Maybe. It's a midrash. The Torah doesn't tell us this. But if you look further on in the next 2 parshas, there is a king that blesses Avraham in the name of God. Melchizedek Melech Shalem blesses Avraham and says, the God of the heavens and the earth, you are blessed by him. And go, oh, there is someone else who knows that there's one God. So there are different commentaries, and I like looking at the wildly different commentaries in general to see what conclusions they come to. And you see that some of them talk about it, that there is this idea of monotheism that is beginning in the world, and Avraham is leading it. And the more you read, you see that Avraham actually has this path that he is going around, and he is telling people about this one path, this one God, right? And some people are following him, some people are not. Avraham is actually quite stubborn about this. So let's go into Lech Lecha for a minute. God says, get up and go to the place that I will show you. Avraham does it. And it says he leaves there with his wife, Sarai, right? So at this point, his name is Avram, not Avraham. And her name is Sarai, not Sarah. And they are going with the Nefesh Asher Asu B'Charan, the people they have done in Haran, where they're coming from. So what does it mean, the people that they've done? Their servants, their slaves, their students, all means the same things in those times from historical points of views. And that was the way that you would basically get an education, is you would give your services to your master, right? So you find this in China, you find this all over the world, that when people wanted to learn a craft or learn wisdom, they would go to the philosopher and basically enslave themselves to him in a way, right? And this is how you would pay for the learning. Otherwise, the teacher has no income, because this is what he's doing. So Avram and Sarah go and they travel and they get into Israel. And it says, and they get to this place that will be known as Shechem, which is an important point for later. And then it says, God talks to Avraham and says, this land I will give to your children, to your descendants, right? As opposed to your students. And Avraham gets up and leaves with Sarah. That's it. He leaves those people behind. But then what does Avraham do right away? He goes to Egypt. He goes to Plishtim. He goes to all these different groups, and he keeps on trying to missionize. Now we're trying to understand a little bit of Avraham and who he is. Avraham Avinu tries to create a cosmopolitic kind of religion, which means he is trying to create a religion that does not revolve around himself and his family, but rather that revolves around the idea there is one God, and the entire world needs to believe this. It's important. So he goes and he is putting himself in a place of danger, right? He's putting himself in a place of going and confronting kings, and his wife gets taken, and he has, right, like, this story is like, this is never a easy path for him. And the word ivri that we use, right, we are the ivrim. So we have a few different names that we are called, but in the Torah we're referred to as Avraham ha-ivri and the ivrim. It means the other side, right? The entire world stands on one side, and Avraham is on the opposite side. He is going and fighting everyone all the time.
Is that an incorrect translation when they call us Hebrews?
Yes, it's not incorrect. It comes from the same source. So Ivrit comes from the word Ivrim, right? So that was a translation of Ivrit and then Hebrews, right? But I'm sure there would have been a more correct way if we were trying to go back to also say it as Ivrim as opposed to as Ivrit, right? But when we're looking at Avraham's story, Avraham and God are fighting nonstop, because Avraham would like the whole world to know that there's one God, and there to be one religion not connected to him. And God says, your descendants, your children, are the future of this religion. And we see the struggle that Avraham goes through over and over and over again, because he keeps on going and making more students, and God keeps on saying, that's not a bad idea to have students, just remember, to your descendants, right? So then he finally has a son. He has a son, Ishmael. And Ishmael, Avraham is obsessed with him. And he turns a blind eye to everything bad that Ishmael does. And he says, this kid is going to be my heir, right? Avraham is not young when he has this kid. He's 88 years old, right? So he says, this kid is everything for me. And Sarah gets pregnant. And before Sarah gets pregnant, God tells him, you will have a son from Sarah. And what does Avraham say? Ishmael's enough. I don't need the child from Sarah. I have Ishmael. And God says, no. The son from Sarah will be your continuation. And Abraham's like, but I'm okay. I have Ishmael. Now, when Yitzchak is born, Yitzchak himself, right, God tells him, Yitzchak is your continuation. Sarah tells Avraham, Yitzchak is your continuation. And Avraham says, but I have Ishmael. Sarah says, get rid of him. Kick him out. Get rid of this child and the concubine, right? Remove them from the house. And Avraham is upset. He doesn't want to, because this is his heir. And God tells him, Sarah is a bigger prophet than you. Sarah knows more than you do in this matter. Listen to what she is saying, because Yitzchak is your... Because Yitzchak, okay, is your heir, right? So, I feel like I'm outnumbered to start making this fight. Yes, severely outnumbered. Yeah, thank you. So,
Just say it's true.
or it's the exception. You don't know, right? Like, it needs to be made a statement. Okay, fine. So,
That happens with nearly all of the wives.
So it's a really interesting thing that the story of all of the fathers and all of the wives, right, and all the mothers, of where their prophecies lie and what is their purpose of each one of them. Okay, so we'll get to it actually a lot more with Yitzchak. But Avraham, God tells him, I'm giving you your last challenge. He doesn't tell him that it's a challenge at that point. And that challenge is Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac. This is what we think of as the biggest of the 10 challenges, when it's not necessarily is, but this is the biggest one that we talk about. And Rashi says over there, Rashi is a very important commentary. He is the first real commentary that we have for the entire Torah, and he helps us understand the context that a lot of things are said in and give us subtext from different midrashim. And Rashi writes over there, he says, God tells him, Kach na et bincha, et yechidcha, asher ahavta et Yitzchak. There is a repetition over there in what God is saying. Take your son, your only son, the one you loved, Yitzchak. God goes, okay, clearly if Avraham would have gotten the message the first time, God would not have needed to repeat this over and over and just say, take your son, right? He says, take your son. And Avraham says, but I have two sons. He says, your only son. He says, but each one of them is the only one for his mother. He says, the one you love. He says, I love both of them. He says, Yitzchak. Okay? Now, this emphasizes something that we, as Jews, skip over a lot, but Muslims emphasize, which is, Ishmael is the favorite son. Hands down. It's hard to ignore it once you read it. Ishmael is the favorite son because, as I mentioned beforehand, Avraham wanted to create a cosmopolitic religion. A religion that does not have to do with lineage, but rather spread the love of one God, or the fear of one God, or a belief in one God, to the entire world. We did not do that as Jews. We have birthed two different religions, Christianity and Islam. Very long conversation, but there are only two monotheistic religions, Judaism and Christianity, and Islam. Christianity is not monotheistic. Now, there are sects in Christianity that are, but this is a massive argument throughout the Rishonim. Okay, so you're talking about 1,000 years ago. You have about 300 to 400 years of arguments. Is Christianity a monotheistic religion? And they're having this, and a lot of it is political because if you say they're not, you're getting executed, right? So you have all of these kinds of discussions that are like under the table, behind, like in the back rooms. What is Christianity a monotheistic religion? And this goes into a few different things. First of all, the Trinity. If you believe in the Trinity, by definition, it is not a monotheistic religion. The second thing, which is a very interesting thing, which is, do you believe the devil can overthrow God? Right? The story of Lucifer rebelling against God and God almost losing that battle and banishing him, right, shows you that Lucifer is more than an angel, right? And now, in the Jewish mindset, angels are spiritual robots. They are programmed, they do things, they have no free will, they don't get points for what they do, they don't get punished for things because this is their job. And each angel has only one job, okay? Raphael, his job is healing, right? He goes to visit the sick. When it says that Avraham, after he is circumcised, 3 angels come. Send one angel to do 3 jobs. You can't. Each angel has his own job. Raphael comes there to heal Avraham, right? Then, I don't remember the other 2, I think Gabriel is one, who's a messenger to pass on good news, which is that Sarah will have a child, and there is, I want to say Michael, but I'm not convinced I remember this correctly, that is to say about the destruction of Sodom, right? So each one has a job, and they don't get to have a personality, right? In Christianity, there is a devil, and the devil will trick you. And so in the beginning of the war, I had a conversation with a pastor in Kenya. We had a conversation. We did an interfaith thing on TV, talking about quite a lot of things. But it was a lot of hasbara, explaining what was going on. And then afterwards, the 2 of us were sitting down, and he said, "What Hamas is doing is the work of the devil." And I go, by saying that, you are taking away responsibility from God and humans, right? Like, that is effectively what you are saying. Where was God in the Holocaust? God was in the Holocaust. Where was God in the 7th of October? God was in the 7th of October, right? It's a horrible thing to hear or to say. right? But saying that he wasn't means God only does the good things. There was an earthquake, it's the devil, right? No, when bad things happen, God is in the good and in the bad, right? What is the bad that we're seeing? That's a different conversation, right? But it's an understanding that we are not taking away responsibility from us as people, right? There is no devil that's tripping you up that you can pass blame onto. And you also can't just say, God is all good, the devil's all bad, therefore that's the forces at work, and sometimes the devil wins. That's not Judaism. And as soon as you're in that kind of mindset, you're not monotheistic, right? You are saying there are two equal forces in the universe. Sometimes good beats evil and sometimes evil beats good. When you say there's God, that's one thing. Now here's another interesting thing about monotheism and an understanding that Avraham brings into the world. If you read any theology of any religion, ancient religions, you'll notice that throughout the entire Tanakh, there are no atheists, right? Which is interesting, because that means it's not a hard concept to think of. Nothing created everything, right? It just happened. Or as Ronald Reagan said, he says, I want to have a really nice feast in the White House. Invite a lot of atheists and then tell them there was never a chef, right? He says, it exists in front of you, you see it. So in the time of the Tanakh, there is no concept of an atheist. There are people who believe in one God and people who believe in multiple gods, right? Because everybody realizes there's something bigger. However, this is where it gets interesting. Anyone who believes in one God tells the story of the flood specifically in one way, and anyone who believes in multiple gods told it in a complete different way. The Babylonian mythology, which is taught in secular schools in Israel, tells the story of how the flood happened. The gods were fighting. One god got angry, kicked the sky down, and the sky fell down on the people and killed everyone. So what does the next generation do? What is the only logical thing to do? What do? The next step after the flood? They build the tower, right? They build the Tower of Babylon. And you can see in archaeological digs, I've got an archaeologist here, right? Around the world, around the same time, you have pyramids, right? All over the world. And there's different speculations of what encouraged building pyramids. Well, it's the steadiest shape that cannot be knocked down. It's really, really tall, and it was built all over continents. And there's speculations about this saying, was that the original mindset of the Migdal Bavel? Is there was a flood, and everybody throughout all of history agrees that there was a flood, either because it's an archetypical story of an apocalypse, or it happened and it terrified the bejesus out of humanity, and they said, what should we do? And if you believe in multiple gods, you say, build pillars, something to hold up the sky. For the next time the gods will knock down the sky, it won't crush us, right? This is a mindset that apparently a lot of mythologies took. But when we talk about the flood, what do we say? We were bad, and therefore God punished humanity and started it over, and the righteous survived. That change is who is responsible. In every monotheistic belief system, we need to take responsibility because we have a direct relationship with God, and when we don't, there are consequences to our actions. And in every pagan religion, everyone that believes in multiple gods, right? And it doesn't matter who it was, the Greeks, the Roman, the Norse, the Egyptians, everybody had the same mentality. Bring offerings to the gods so that they will be fat and lazy and they will not smite us by accident because we are puny bugs, right? It's not that we are worshiping them because we have a relationship with them. It's we are worshiping them to keep them lazy, right? And you can read throughout like Greek mythology of the mindset. The gods are better people. They have flaws. What should we do? Fatten them up, right? Bring as many offerings as you could. And that changes something. Okay, so back to Avraham and this understand. Avraham Avinu, as all three of the Avot, of the three patriarchs, have have very specific personalities. Avraham, his personality is called chesed. Chesed is charity. He wants to give. He wants to do. He goes out of his way, which is why when we talk about the binding of Yitzchak, Akedat Yitzchak, who is it a challenge for? Avraham. And if you read and you do a timeline, Yitzchak is 33 years old at that time. His father is over 100, right? He could say, I'm not willing to be sacrificed. He can stop it, right? But this is not Yitzchak's challenge. Avraham's challenge is he's a person of kindness and he is standing up against what he believes because God tells him to do so. Putting Avraham aside for a second. Going to Yitzchak. So why is this not a challenge for Yitzchak? Because Yitzchak has the polar opposite type of personality. Yitzchak has din, or what is called gvura. Those are the two names for his personality. Din is straightforward. This is what happens. This is what God decided. This is why it's happening. Gvura is bravery. Din comes in a very interesting place. If you went to Avraham Avinu and you said, I'm sick, pray for me. He would pray, right, as he prayed for the people of Sodom. And he says, I know they're all wicked. Maybe there's one good person. Let's save everybody, right? That's Avraham. Go way beyond what is the law, right? What is supposed to happen, and say, even though they're not following your word, God, forgive them anyway. That is Avraham. You go to Yitzchak and you say, Yitzchak, I'm sick. He says, you deserve it, right? Clearly, you have done something that you deserve to be sick for, right? Do tshuva, do something. There is there is consequences in this world, and Yitzchak is not a friendly kind of person, right? Like, it's not the, oh, let me help you kind of person. Now, this is the polar opposite of Avraham. And this is why, when you read the entire story of Avraham and Yitzchak, they do not talk to each other. There are no interactions. There's one place where Yitzchak's like, what are we doing over here? And he says, we're going to offer you up as an offering. And Yitzchak goes, okay, and continues. Done, right? There is no interaction. There is no, give me some fatherly wisdom. This is, Yitzchak goes to school and is bummed out that his father is so generous. And Avram is like, why is my kid so stubborn, right? So when it comes time to choose between the children before the binding of Yitzchak, who does he choose? Ishmael. And Hashem repeats it over and over again, right? This is a constant fight. Now, it's important to know the history of Islam to be able to understand that Avraham chose Ishmael for a reason. And there is a lot to discuss in the big picture of things. And I'm leaving politics completely out of this. But the future of the world needs Judaism, Christianity, and Islam to work together. Okay? It needs it. It is, right? There's a lot of things that are happening in the world, and you see that there's a lot of ties inside religion, politics removed, that are extremely important. And we used to have this, I had a lot of interfaith work with imams and sheikhs and bishops and pastors. We used to sit together in Abrahamic faith discussions, and we would discuss, right, like, what do we have more in common as opposed to things that we're opposed to? And there is a lot in this world that religion should be sticking together against a woke mentality, against things that are complete opposite to the religion, right? And say, from a religious point of view, here's what we agree on, right? Now, everybody's got their own perspective, and we are not the same religion, and that's really important to understand. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are very, very different, right? But each one of them has their place, and we are meant to work together. Judaism, in its core, it doesn't missionize. Yet we have a goal that the entire world will know that there's one God. So pick or and choose, right? Like either go and missionize, do what Christianity and Islam did, or say, look, we're really okay with being the only monotheistic religion in the world. We're not okay with being the only monotheistic religion in the world. Yet the other monotheistic religions try to destroy us throughout all of history, right? So again, pick and choose. Like, what do you want as a religion? So we have birthed two religions, willingly or unwillingly, to do this for us. And they've done a horrifying job and an amazing job, right? Because we don't agree with the way they've done it. But you get to the deepest jungles in Africa, and people know that there's one God, right? It has reached there. It has reached the corners of the earth. So that means we do have a goal of working together. What that goal looks like is a very, very interesting conversation, but it will happen because it needs to happen. And Avraham says, I'm picking Ishmael because I want the kid who says, it's not my bloodline, it's the world. And God tells him, no, it needs to be your bloodline. So he picks Yitzchak. He's not thrilled about it. He picks Yitzchak. He sends his servant, Eliezer, and he says, I want you to go find a wife for Yitzchak. Now, let's recall what happens when he goes to find a wife. Eliezer goes to Canaan to find a wife for, he leaves Canaan. He goes back to Aram Naharaim to go find a wife for Yitzchak. And what does he look for? He looks for generosity, right? He looks for a girl who will go and do way above and beyond what she has asked for. Can I have a little bit of water? Sure, let me give you a cup of water and give all of your camels water, right? Like, that is not a small, it's not, oh, and I'll leave you the bottle, right? It's, and I will bring up hundreds of buckets to give your camels water. Avraham is looking, and Eliezer is looking for a wife for Yitzchak that is Avraham. Okay? It is the exact opposite of Yitzchak to balance him out. This is the opposites attract, right? It is taking this personality and going, we are going to combine Yitzchak with Rivka, who's actually, in the essence of her, Avraham. When we read the story of Avraham and the angels, it says, Avraham says, come, how about you sit down? I'll give you a little bit of water and a little bit of bread. And then he runs and he slaughters three cows for them. And he tells his wife, don't make bread, make cakes, right? Like, let them eat cake, right? Just go for it. Go all out, right? So it's, I know for French that means something else, okay? But it's like, let's go all out. As opposed to what Avraham says. And Rivka says, here, how about let me give you some water, and then goes and gives all the camels. There is a mindset that needs to happen. Now, Yitzchak has a personality of gvura, of bravery. What does bravery look like? Some people look at it of getting up and fighting everything. Read the story of Yitzchak in detail. You'll realize Yitzchak has no story. Nothing. The story of Yitzchak is Avraham and Sarah waiting for him to be born. He is being offered up on the altar by his father, which is his father's challenge and his father's story. It is not Yitzchak's story, it's Avram's story. And then he gets married, which he has nothing to do with. Someone else finds him a wife, right? They try to have children for a while. Eventually he is forced to pray, because that is a very interesting thing, because he doesn't pray. Naturally, Yitzchak doesn't pray, because why pray? If we're not supposed to have children, then we don't pray. And then there's something that breaks in him, and he does pray, and then they have children right away. Okay? And it says that Rivka prays and prays and prays, and then Yitzchak prays. So there's something in his prayer that needed to happen, because he refused to pray, and God's like, I'm going to make you pray. Until you don't pray, you don't get children. Right? Then he has children who he has nothing to do with, right? Like, there is no interaction of him with his children. And then he gives Yaakov a blessing, which is Yaakov's story, and Yitzchak dies. That's it, right? So Yitzchak has one story that is about him, and it's him arguing with the king of Plishtim. And even over there, he's not really the main part of the story. This story already happened with Avram and Sarah, and that was it. So there's something very weird about Yitzchak being a patriarchal figure, right? Like, you're one of the fathers of the religion. We know nothing about you. So if you read it, you realize that he has the repeating stories of Avraham. He never leaves the country, and he doesn't do anything extraordinary. And this is bravery in and of itself. I talked about this a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, in Nitzavim, about the fact is we are not the main character of the story. We are a chain in a very long link, right? And Rabbi Sachs has a very nice part about this of, I have a dream that I open up, that I go into the Jewish library, and there is all the names of all the families, the Jewish families that ever lived. And I see Sachs, and I take out the book, and I see all of my ancestors that came before me, and I see all the empty pages that will come after me, and I see my page, and I get to write what I write in it. But I'm a page, right? Like, I am not the entire book, right? The consequences of our actions, right? The consequences of our actions are, is it doing justice to all the generations that came before us, right? A lot of us have our ancestors went through Holocaust, pogroms, right? Untold horrors. And the question is, are we living in a way that they are proud of, right? That justified their suffering? Are our ancestors, are our descendants better off because of the way that we are setting for them now, right? So there's also looking back and also looking forward. And Yitzchak says, I am not changing anything. Avraham put us on a good path, and I am staying. I don't get to have my own story. And that's a really big challenge, especially in a time where we would like to be the main character of our own story. And the truth is that the majority of us are not. The majority of us are not, right? Like, when we read the story of Esther, there's a beautiful saying that Mordechai tells her. He says, Umi yodea im la'et hazot hegat lamalchut. Who knows if this is the entire reason you became queen? And then he continues and he says, and if you try to run away, you and all of your ancestors will just disappear from that timeline. You go, oh, all of Esther's ancestors meant nothing in the Jewish history. We don't know anything about them. We know Esther, right? She became a main character. Who are her descendants? We know nothing about that, right? Like, who comes afterwards? We don't know. But we know that there was a bottleneck from the tribe of Binyamin to reach this magnificent person, Esther, who saves the Jewish people, right? And that is Yitzchak. Yitzchak is, I'm a chain in the link. I don't get to be the big story.
Link in the chain.
A link in the chain. Thank you. Okay, a link in the chain. I don't get to be the main character. Funny enough, the Zohar, mystical side of Judaism, says that when Mashiach comes, we will no longer be known as Am Yisrael, but rather as Am Yitzchak. That Yitzchak has like a very special place, and he dives like very deep into who Yitzchak is. And Yitzchak is, are you guys familiar with Hillel and Shammai? Hillel and Shammai argue the whole time in throughout the Mishnah and the Gemara. They were what's called a chavruta, right? They're partners. They sit and they learn together. One was the president of the Jewish people, and one is the head of the yeshiva, right? And the two of them would sit and discuss what the halacha, what the Jewish law is going to be, and they cannot agree on anything.
That's where
right?
Jewish politics were born.
Jewish politics were born when they sold Yosef into slavery. It's like that far back, right? But it's just like, it's nonstop, right? So like there's this argument constantly, and in all but 6 cases, Hillel is right and Shammai is wrong. And the Gemara says, and when Mashiach comes, Shammai will be right in all of those cases, right? So there is something that will change in the existence of the world, that we will be worthy to not need the b'di'evet. How do you say b'di'evet? The more lenient side of things that we need today is because we're living in an imperfect world. But when the world is perfect, then we get to be Yitzchak. we don't have the struggles of Yaakov or Avraham. So Yitzchak has 2 children. The 2 children, twins, Yaakov and Esav, are polar opposites in every way, shape, or form. Esav is born. He is a redhead, which is the Torah and Tanakh's way of saying ADHD. Funny enough. He is impulsive. He is aggressive. He cannot control his baseline desires. And he goes out of control, right? And Yitzchak loves him. And Rivka loves Yaakov. Yaakov is named Yaakov because he wasn't even able to be born right. He grabs onto his brother's ankle and pulls him his way out. He is kind of a wimp. We know that he's in the kitchen cooking for himself and that he likes to stay in the tent. So Rashi says he's a learned boy, right? And you go, okay, right? But it says Yitzchak loves Esav. And Rivka, she loves Yaakov. Why does Yitzchak love Esav? Because he needs to pick a son who's going to be able to continue the nation. And his son, Esav, is a man. He's going to do it. He's a fighter, right? He'll be okay. Yaakov, he's a nice boy. He's a mommy's boy. He's nice. Okay? We're not even convinced he's a mommy's boy. Okay? We just know Rivka likes him. Why does Rivka like him? Because she gets the prophecy that Yitzchak does not get. She gets a prophecy that says, you have twins, right? Yitzchak doesn't hear this. And it says, the younger child will become greater than his older brother, and the older brother will worship the younger brother. So she loves him because she knows that he has a future. Because you shouldn't love your weak children, right? You have natural selection. You got 2 kids, one of them is getting a blessing, right? Stick to the one who's going to survive, right? The other one, you're like, you know what? If there's leftovers, you'll eat today, okay? So Yaakov is not the ideal child. Here's a Freudian truth. If your father is righteous, you have a good chance of turning out to be wicked just to spite him, right? If your father is wicked, you have a good chance of becoming righteous just to spite him, right? Which is why a righteous man, a son of a righteous man, is such a rare occurrence that the Gemara talks about it. It's like, oh my gosh, you managed to stay in your father's path. What went wrong, right? That you managed to actually stay good in a good house, right? Because we have this natural inclination to rebel against our parents. So Yitzchak looks at his children and he goes, look, I got 2 kids. One who's going to make it in the world, one who's not. This one's a little bit of a troublemaker. That's okay. We can fix that. Fixing being a nerd, there's no real fix for this. So there's a commentary that talks about this and says it's extremely important that Yitzchak not know about this prophecy. Right? Rivka knows about the prophecy, Yitzchak doesn't. Why is this so important? So that he will steal the blessing. Now, Yaakov's personality, we refer to him as emet, truth. He has the combination of Avraham and Yitzchak funneled into him through Rivka and Yitzchak, becoming this ideal child. Yaakov, when he will become a man, is known as Israel. Now, this one is Ohev Israel, okay? The name Israel combines in it all of the fathers and all of the mothers. Yud is Yitzchak, Yaakov, Israel. Shin, Sarah, Reish, Rivka, Rachel, Aleph, Avraham, and Lamed, Leah. All of them are inside his name. In other words, when Yaakov will be worthy to be Israel, when he becomes Israel, what ends up happening? He embodies all of them, right? He has become this person who can become a nation. And Yitzchak doesn't want him to be, because he would like a leader. He would like someone who can face problems in the world, because The world is a rough place, and if you're naive, and you're a sucker, and you can be taken for a ride, you will, and you will lose every single time. And we know from 4,000 years of Jewish history that the world is rough, and if you don't build a thick skin, you will lose, right? So we learn to adapt. But this adapting didn't start with us. It started with our forefathers. Now, Yaakov goes and he steals the blessing. This is a big move. Yeah.
Why would Rivka want him to steal the blessing and not like just tell Yitzchak and get the blessing as is?
Amazing. So one of the commentaries, I don't remember who says this, but it says it is important that he goes through this transformation of learning how to be conniving to an extent. He needs to learn how to deal with this world. Okay? And he does. He does with his father. Then he does with his later on father-in-law, but his mother's cousin, Lavan, who cheats him 1,000 times. Then his children lie to him, right? It's a never-ending story of Yaakov learning to become a man. And he does. He fights the angel and becomes Israel, right? But that only happens when he's able to fight Esav, when he's able to get up and overcome his, for lack of a nicer word, wimpiness that he initially has, right? He is born into the world weak, Yaakov, right? He comes from holding on to others to survive. Somewhat of a parasite.
It's like Ekev,
okay?
like
The Ekev, the heel, right? Somewhat of a parasite, right? He is not a lovable character in the beginning. He becomes a personality, and that's what he needs. Now, here's something interesting. Yitzchak says something really powerful when he comes to bless Yaakov. Hakol kol Yaakov, v'hayadayim yedei Esav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, and the hands are the hands of Esav. And then he blesses him. He's confused, right? He comes in and he says, I feel you, right? There's something over here that is very Esav in its personality. Whether he's feeling his hands or he's feeling the action. There's something Esav-y about what's happening here. But your kind words, forget about your voice, right? Your kind words, the way you're talking to me, is very Yaakov. And there's somewhat of a prayer in what Yitzchak is saying before he gives the blessing, which is, this is the child I've been waiting for. Either Esav, my ideal child, to learn to be a mensch, right? Or my weaker child to man up. And one of these two has to give, right? Esav does not become kinder after this. Yaakov does learn how to fight, right? When he gives the blessing to Yosef, he says, "V'ani natati lecha Shechem echad alachecha." I gave you Shechem, right? The city of Shechem. Asher lakachti miyad ha'emori becharbi uvekashti. That I took from the Emori and the Moavi with my sword and my bow, right? Rashi says, mamash, as is, right? Which is a funny thing for Rashi to say, because Rashi doesn't usually say, this is what the Torah means, it is what it says, right? Rashi's usually a commentary, and he says, exactly like this it happened. Yaakov went to war with a sword and a bow and conquered for Yosef, right? Yaakov is no longer Yaakov, he's Israel. And Israel, we are known as Am Yisrael only when we are united, when we are the tribes together. So, Yaakov.
Should just be aware that it's 5 days.
Okay. How much energy do you guys have? We'll finish with the Yaakov then. Okay, we'll finish with Yaakov, we'll continue another time with the other ones.
We're gonna stop going to your classes and keep
So Yaakov, I'm trying to think how I'm summing it.
You do have a watch.
I do. It's telling me how much time I've been talking for.
And yet.
Yeah. And yet. Okay, so my thinking while I'm going through the different, the specifically the three fathers, is gonna steal a little bit more of your time because I need to go into Yaakov and making another mistake. Yaakov again has 12 sons, and he picks Yosef, right? And we'll leave Yosef for another year to talk about the other four Ushpizin. But Yosef the brothers don't accept this. They sell him. Yosef is right. There's a lot to discuss about Yosef and his journey. And then after Yaakov does this, and he is down in Egypt with Yosef, he takes the two children of Yosef, and Yosef brings Ephraim and Menashe, and he brings them, Menashe to his right and Ephraim to his left. And Yaakov does this, right? And he blesses with his right hand Ephraim. And Yosef goes, no, this one is the older one, bless him with the right. And Yaakov says, I know what I'm doing. Go, do you? Do you know what you're doing? Because the last time you did this, they sold me into slavery, right? Like, this is not a good move, right? And the blessing that we give our sons is Yesimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chimnashe. You should be like Ephraim and Menashe, that they loved and respect each other. First brothers in history, right? Because despite what people think, brothers should not love each other. Brothers should kill each other, right? You're fighting over a limited resource, right? So as parents, we tell our kids, you're siblings, you should love each other. But the reality is, it is exactly the opposite, right? You are siblings. You are fighting for the limited resource. You should be careful, because if we're not nice to each other, this ends badly. And the book of Bereshit, in a way, is a warning sign for how we should treat our siblings, because Cain and Hevel do not communicate, right? It says Cain tries to talk to Hevel, it doesn't work, so he kills him, right? This is the first brother rival in the world, which is, I didn't get what I wanted, so I killed you. And it makes sense, right? It's just a whole different class on why it makes sense, okay? But it's conquer the world. There's limited resources, and we are the only inheritors of it. Therefore, when brothers fight, it's dangerous because it gets serious fast. And Avraham tells this to Lot, and he says, we should separate because we are brothers, right? And you go, because you're brothers, you should get along. He says, no, because we're brothers, we'll kill each other, right? Because we are fighting over the same resource, and while other people are not. So this is a whole thing that we're unfamiliar with because we are not biblical anymore, right? But there's a very deep understanding. And the question that was in my mind is, three fathers, heads of the religion, birthed the religion, and all three of them picked wrong, right? Avram picks Ishmael, Yitzchak picks Esav, and Yaakov picks Yosef. Realistically, the majority of us here are descendants from Yehuda. That's why we are called Yehudim, Jews, right? We come from that tribe. So all of them picked wrong. They go, like, what's up with that? Now, huh?
Listen to the ladies.
Listen to the ladies, right? Yet again, okay? Well, here, with the even with Yosef, that works. Okay, so there's a very interesting thing
Why are you fighting it?
Why am I fighting it? It's the man inside of me who says I need to fight it.
It's been 11 years.
So there's a mindset that you see that Judaism needed to be created in a certain way through a struggle and a resistance to what initially the fathers wanted. Avram wanted to create a religion that is completely love. That comes later on. It's Christianity. Yitzchak wanted to create a religion that is completely strict. That came out later. That is Islam. Yaakov is the first time that there's potential, and he doesn't know it yet, which is why he picks Yosef. Yosef, in truth, is the one who picks the brothers, right? Yosef picks the brothers, and that is why we are a nation. Not because Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov but because everything, all of their DNA and their learning and their teaching leads us to Yosef. And Yosef gives that up because, like Yitzchak, he realizes it's not about him. There is something as parents, some of you as grandparents, okay? There are future parents, okay? There is a mindset that is important that happened throughout this class, which is we are doomed to repeat the mistakes of our grandparents, not of our parents, right? So your parents give you a curfew, right? And they say, be home at 8:00. You grow up and you say, I suffered, I didn't have a social life, I will not give my kids a curfew. Then your kids do not get a curfew, and they know what they did when they didn't have a curfew, right? So then they tell their kids, you're going to be home at 8:00, right? So the kid grows up and goes, oh, that was no fun. My kids will have no curfew, right? And Avraham and Yaakov are very similar, and Yosef and Yitzchak are very similar. They're above it, right? But Yosef makes a change and goes, even though he is above it, and he really is, okay? He's right about everything. He just doesn't know how to communicate it. So he becomes king and his brothers still hate him, right? Like there's a lot of problems with Yosef in his interpersonal relations, but he gives it to Yehuda, right? Yehuda becomes king. And this is where King David comes from. And all of them are tied in together. All of the shepherds, the 7 shepherds are all tied in together. But the end of it is Yehuda and Yosef, or David and Yosef, birthed the 2 Mashiachs. And with this I will finish, okay? There are 2 Mashiachs. We only ever talk about one. Mashiach ben David. But there is also Mashiach ben Yosef. And he is a Mashiach that is a not necessary Mashiach. He doesn't need to happen. He happens when there is a necessary push that needs to happen for the nation. There is a war, and he dies in that war. And because of his death, Mashiach ben David can come. As opposed to Mashiach ben David can come in the ideal way. And you have this bottlenecking of we're going through a process. We have Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov throughout the night, and tonight is the last night of Sukkot. Tomorrow is the last day of Sukkot, and then we're going into a new holiday, into Shmini Atzeret. Tonight is the night of David, right? And it's through years and generations of compromise and understanding and taking from Avraham and taking from Yitzchak and taking from Yaakov and going in this whole process, we get to Yosef, who says, even though it should be me, I should be Mashiach, I will die in battle and let the kinder Mashiach be birthed. The Mashiach that comes from Yehuda, that comes from David, that comes from a different perspective. And we'll talk about it, I guess, next year. We'll talk about Yehuda and Yosef, because there's a lot to talk about there. All right, stay tuned for more.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And Chag Sameach. See you guys tomorrow night.